This is the Brandon Smith Show, and of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. So, it's funny, dysfunction comes in all different forms, and sometimes it comes with us stepping on each other's toes, and sometimes we step on each other's toes just because we're rude or we don't really think about it. And so this topic today, I think, is really relevant to this. We're going to talk about etiquette, and we're going to talk about business etiquette. And so before you get turned off by that idea, I think it is so needed in this world. I think it is so critical to this world. And when people don't operate with that level of respect for each other, that's when they step on toes and they cause bumpy relationships. And then I get called in to fix that. And so today we're going to do a little hygiene. How can we prevent some of that? So to help us through this journey, talking about etiquette and business etiquette, I have a wonderful expert and guest on our show today. So Stayce Wagner. Stayce, welcome.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me today.
I am thrilled to have you. And
I'm thrilled to be here.
And I'm thrilled to have an expert on a topic like this because it is so needed. You and I both know the value and importance of this. Mm-hmm. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit more about your journey and how you got into this.
All right.
But I think I want to honor the fact first that you've got a pretty awesome title. So you are founder of Spencer Crane Etiquette, LLC. And so you do a lot of kind of business etiquette coaching and guidance. Is that fair?
Yes. I work with corporate organizations. I work with nonprofits and educational institutions.
Oh, fantastic. So a little bit of everybody.
A little bit of everybody.
And we all need it.
We do.
That's great. Hopefully you can fix people who get on planes too. Can we do something like right at the gate? Like when people are walking onto the plane, like a quick little like, hey, do these 3 things on this flight and everyone's going to be really happy.
Well, I understand why that's so important, but I have to say I don't fix people. I help them figure it out for themselves, how to navigate spaces.
Spoken like a true coach, folks. Spoken like a true coach. Okay, so story time. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this. What was your journey that led you down this path?
Well, I'm just thinking, because how do you become an etiquette lady? It's an interesting story. It was a circuitous path. Of course, I did not wake up at 8 and say, I want to be an etiquette professional. That would have been a little tragic, maybe. But there's 2 sides, of course. There's the etiquette side and the business side. The etiquette side, etiquette's always been a part of my life. My mother sent us to charm school. I went to modeling school, which turned out to be finishing school for middle-class girls. John Robert Powers, if I date myself really severely. I competed in pageants, and in 2011, before I started my business, I attended the Protocol School of Washington in order to add some current credibility to my resume as an etiquette lady. Yeah. On the business side, I am I used to be a paralegal. Mm-hmm. I was an intellectual property law paralegal for a very, very long time. And if you know anything about the world of attorneys, and I'm saying that facetiously because I know you know a lot about it, the attorneys have all of the managerial power. And everyone else who operates on teams, we have to use our soft skills to get people to buy in because you have deadlines and you have to manage down, across, and up. And so it was in that environment that I really honed my business etiquette skills without realizing it. Fast forward to the downturn, I was ready for something different, and I wanted to give back to the community. So I thought, well, this is something I love doing because I was always the de facto etiquette lady in my family. I learned about the foster care system I was in California at the time, and how the young people there who don't get adopted, they end up aging out of the system at the age of 18, and they end up, a lot of them, homeless and basically on their own. And part of the issue is that they never receive the life skills that we all take for granted. Simple things like navigating the workspace. Yeah. So I thought, well, this is a great way for me to give back. So I started working in that space, and I soon realized that it was a missing piece for a lot of young people. And I started finding my audience, which is primarily young women in their early career years. Shortly after I began my business, I moved to Atlanta. My husband had a job change. I had never visited Atlanta before. I knew one person here, well, two, high school friends. So I started my business all over again. I started from scratch.
Wow.
And that's my story.
What a beautiful story. You know what I love about the story, which hits me, a few things hit me. First, it's sounds a lot about emotional intelligence. Being able to kind of read other people and think about that. It sounds like that was a big skill that you honed when you were working as a paralegal. You had to really be able to do that and navigate. The other thing I love about this, it almost reframes our conversation, is it's very much a life skill. And I think that's the need that you saw in the world, that people needed this life skill to really be able to progress.
Yes.
And without it,
yes,
it could be that roadblock that could hold them back from even not only just realizing aspirations, but even getting opportunities.
Exactly. I think the research shows that about 25% of your career success depends upon your soft skills. And while your technical skills clearly are the big piece, that 25%, when it's missing, can cause you a lot of issues.
Okay. So, issues. Let's chat a little bit about those. What are some of the things that you're seeing today that are maybe either main pain points or maybe even new?
Well, there are four major things that I see. Some of them are old points, but because the world has changed, they're presenting new problems.
Okay.
For instance, the first thing that I can think of is not looking the part at work. When I was a young professional, it was easy to look the part at work because there was a certain way you had to dress. In the legal field, it was the sheath dress or the business suit for women, a pair of sensible pumps, a sensible makeup, et cetera, et cetera. Today, every industry seems to have its own work uniform. So for instance, you've got the tech industry. Denim, think of Steve Jobs and his infamous uniform of the mom jeans and the rundown shoes and the black turtleneck. But then you still have the banking world and the legal world, which is very much conservative and may not accept that even during that period of time where we had the casual Fridays. Even though they've moved into business casual, that's not something that you would probably wear to work. And then you have the creatives, in which high style is accepted, and that's something that if you go in a suit, people will wonder what's going on with you. So you have to look the part. And so that presents a challenge. I especially see this for young women, because if you go online, Brandon, and you look at, I won't call any particular retailer out, just any retailer, look at their website under what to wear, workwear. It runs, I always use it as examples. I make screenshots and I use it as examples in my seminars as to what not to do, because it's all over the place. So when managers see their employees or young employees coming in and they're dressed improperly, I always say cut them a little bit of slack, because it's really hard these days to figure out what's appropriate. But the biggest thing I see in that area is the confusion between what I call club wear and workwear. It can be very subtle, but you see a lot of it. The super short dresses, the plunging necklines, and often you'll see a beautiful white blouse, for example, which is usually a no-brainer for work, but it will have a plunging neckline. And so if you're a young professional woman, you're just entering the workforce, well, you see that blouse and you say, well, yes, that checks my list. I need a white blouse for work, but it's still inappropriate because they've mixed these two areas of clothing. So it's very confusing for a lot of people.
I totally get it. And I have this, you would think my closet, you would think I was unmedicated if you went into my closet, because there's so many different things. Because probably a lot like you, I'm working in different work environments, so I have to think about what's that industry I'm going to be in.
Yes.
So that people aren't distracted by my attire and they listen to what I have to say.
Yes.
So if I'm working with tech and software, I'm going to dress a lot like I'm dressed today. I've got jeans on and kind of fun socks and casual shoes, but yeah, I've got my more conservative clients, and I'm fully suited up with a tie.
Yes. You have to look the part.
Yeah. Okay. What would be guidance on how do you figure out the part?
Well, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing is, if your company has a dress policy, read it. All of them don't. Read it, and in it, it won't give you guidance on what to wear. It will give you guidance on what not to wear. Things like beach wear and jogging pants and that sort of thing. So you'll eliminate that. Next step, you should consider your industry. We were just talking about, banking, tech, creative. What's your space? And within that space, every type of business has its quote-unquote uniform or its boundaries. It's more of boundaries. Then the next step is to look within your organization, because even though your organization is banking, maybe it's very, very relaxed business casual. And there's certain things that are acceptable in your organization that wouldn't be acceptable in another banking institution. Thirdly, this is the tried and true. The old-fashioned dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. Look to your boss and to your colleagues who dress well and whose careers are doing well, and see how they dress. Emulate them. The next thing is to try to eliminate distractions. And this is where you've got to, it's self-analysis. You've got to take a look at yourself. Things like, for women, the jangly bracelets, or, and I know I hate to say this, but I have to say it, the hair color that's outside the realm of nature. If you're not in a creative space, maybe that's going to be a distraction.
For those that cannot hear this, my wonderful producer, Isaac, just burst into laughter. Stacey, you get 2 points for making Isaac laugh. Fantastic. Outside the realm of nature.
Yes. For instance, tattoos. I have a lot of clients who have tattoos, and I understand you're young, you want to express yourself. But think to the future. Try to get that tattoo somewhere where it's not clearly visible, easily visible. And I know that goes against. So it can be covered
or displayed based on the situation and context.
Exactly.
So I'm hearing neck tattoos, probably not a good idea.
Not a good idea. My stepson, he just had to have a tattoo. So we'd always have these conversations, what do you think about it? So he eventually got a tattoo, and it covered both of my my wish list. It was tasteful, and it's in a place where it will never affect his work. But it also it's in a place where he's out playing and having fun with his friends at the beach. Everyone can see it. So I was very proud of him when he decided that he was going to do it. He needed to express himself, but he thought about his future when he made the decisions.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, I noticed we're at break. So to summarize, we kind of started diving into this topic of what are some of the no-nos or etiquette no-nos that we're seeing. One is the whole dressing the part, knowing how to dress the proper way. And I think you gave some great tips on how to do that. And I love the idea of even looking up to your boss and boss's boss to see kind of what the tone is in that culture. I had a client of mine, just like you mentioned, worked for a tech startup, had her hair colored a color maybe not outside the realm of nature, and really excited to be working there, and had tattoos and excited to show those. And then she got promoted to manager, and then she got promoted to director, and then her hair color normalized to a certain degree, and she covered up more of her tattoos. I think, and I would want to be clear to people what I'm interpreting you're saying, how I would interpret it, is we're not saying don't be yourself.
No, we're
saying honor the role that you're in a way that shows that respect and shows the people around you respect, so they're not distracted, and so they can focus on what you're saying, and not how you're looking, which I think is important. All right, so let's go to break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. I'm already learning a lot. I need to go look at my closet, folks. Okay, so we'll come right back. We'll talk more about kind of etiquette do's and don'ts. So stay tuned. everyone, this is Brandon. I hope your 2018 is everything you'd hoped it would be. That said, we could all use a tune-up. Go to my site, theworkplacetherapist.com, www.theworkplacetherapist, all one word, .com, for a library of resources for you. You can find past shows, blog posts on navigating workplace dysfunction, and even my TED Talk on the contagiousness of emotions in the workplace. And that's not all. There are the Workplace Happiness Workbooks to help you find happiness in your job, and even a tab to Ask the Therapist, where you can ask me anything on your mind. We all need a tune-up once in a while. Get yours today. Welcome back from break. So today's show, we are talking about etiquette. And so before break, my wonderful guest, Stacey, was taking us through this idea of some of the no-nos. And when you listed out, there was 4. We got to number 1, which was not dressing the part.
Yes.
And you gave us some great tips around that. What's our second one?
Our second one is treating your social media presence as if privacy really is a thing.
Okay, so you're saying that's a no-no. Like if you actually think it's private,
yes,
you're kidding yourself.
Well, exactly. You are kidding yourself if you think it's private. But I think the problem is that we're in our cocoon when we are texting or posting, and we feel like we're in a bubble, but we're not. And so we have to keep in mind that everything you post, whether it's in a private group or you've got your privacy setting on, it's public. It's going to sit in a server forever, and it can be accessed. And so you have to be mindful that you're creating a digital record of yourself. You know, there's a thing about first impressions when you go to a job interview, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the people who interview us will already have an impression of us before we step into their space to do the actual physical interview because they've checked our social media. And so you have to be mindful of that. You have to always think, well, would I want an employer to see this? And I know it feels a bit contrived maybe, or you can't really be yourself, and that's what the internet is all about, expressing yourself, but this is the world in which we live. There's a Career Builder survey that says, it comes out every year, and I think it was the most recent one said that 70% of employers review social media sites and online search engines before or during the interview process. So it's a part of life. So I try to encourage people to think about what they're posting, and to, I guess the best thing to do is to think about the rules of small talk when you post, because you are having a conversation, and not just with the person that you're tweeting or posting on behalf of or at. It's with everyone who's going to see that. So just be mindful.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, because it's something that to give grace and try and be fair to a certain degree to, say, a younger generation, this was never really an option before.
Right.
You couldn't just put your voice in the world.
Yes.
You had to earn that.
You did.
You had to work your way up. You get promotions, you get titles, and then your megaphone got bigger.
Yes.
Now we're giving people a massive megaphone at like 8 years old.
Yes.
And say, just shout into the world.
Yes.
Anything you want.
Yes.
And they may not have learned the maturity
right.
or how to really use that.
Exactly.
And so they put out stuff when they're 16, 17 years old that may come back to haunt them when they're 26 or 27 years old.
Exactly. It's unfair. I think it's unfair, but it's happening. You know, they are given this, like you said, this huge megaphone with little to no guidance. And then when it's time to work, it's used against them. I mean, you see that happening more and more in the news. They'll go dig up some celebrities' blogs that they did when they were 16 or 17. And of course, you're going to grow and you're going to change. If I journaled my entire young life. If those journals had been done online, I would never leave the house, Brandon. So I encourage everyone to think about it. You have a really powerful tool, you know, and hopefully the older millennials, as they move into managerial positions, they will be more forgiving for youthful mistakes, for the people coming behind them, because it's still new technology. We're working through it. But don't count on it. I say don't count on it. Think about what you post before you post.
Okay. So this also bleeds into this idea of authenticity.
Yes.
Right? And so that's a big buzzword. I
Yes.
want to be me. And so misuse authenticity is like, I'm me, and just you hear me roar. And then I can say and do whatever I want. And you've got to accept that.
Exactly.
Because if you don't accept that, then you're being bad.
Exactly. You have to start with your definition of what authenticity is. When you look at the advertisements and all that sort of thing, it's always what the definition you gave. But I think true authenticity is being guided by the principles you live by, your core values. And of course, those will adjust as you get older. But if you look at it that way, you can express yourself. But it allows for two things. It allows you to respect other people. And it allows you, especially when you're a young person, it allows you some flexibility. Because if you define authenticity as fixed, and this is who I am, take it or leave it, I'll always be the same person. Well, that isn't human nature. We grow, we evolve. There's a wonderful quote by Muhammad Ali that I love, the late Muhammad Ali. And it goes something like, the man who thinks the same way at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. So authenticity, especially for young people, it has to allow for some flexibility. There's a wonderful article, I think it's called The Authenticity Paradox, where it's discussed, well, in times of transition, you need to be able to try on new hats. So your perception of who you are has to allow for flexibility. And when you're in your early career years, it's all flexible. You have to be willing to let yourself try new things.
Yeah. Okay. If we were to go back in time to maybe when we grew up and we had our grandmother sitting here speaking with us, they might say things like, in company, you don't talk about religion, politics, money, or sex. Right? Those are the common.
Absolutely.
Those are like you don't do that.
You don't do that.
Did those rules still apply in social media? And what's your perspective on that?
In social media, I think they should apply. I don't think people apply them, but they should. But in business settings, we'll probably debate about the social media piece, but in one-on-one situations or when in-person situations in business, they absolutely apply. For the simple reason that the goal of communicating in business is to build relationships, is to create a good impression. You want that person to leave feeling good about you. And it's a lot easier when you have avoided hot button topics as opposed to having a heated discussion about a political issue, or even maybe not having a heated discussion, just the other person not revealing to you that you have just deeply offended them. And they're going to remember that. That leaves everyone walks away with an impression of one another after an encounter. So you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah. I think that's just a good rule of thumb. So in those one-on-one conversations, try and stay away from all that.
Yes.
Social media, maybe there's some room to.
But you have to be respectful.
Yeah, I think that's.
You can talk, you can voice your opinion without becoming a troll.
I think that's fair.
Without shutting the other person down, without using profanity. And maybe I do sound like an old lady when I say that. But one of the things that always takes me aback is when I'm going through social media post and I see, the initials and it's profanity or whatnot. And I'm thinking, you are a smart person. You can get your opinion across without the profanity. And if you take a step back and remember that one day an employer is going to be looking at this, do you really want this? I am definitely not someone who's never used profanity. And when I was 13, I used a lot of it. But that's what you do when you're 13. But when you get older, there's the expectation that you're going to use your big words. And so I encourage everyone to use their big words.
Well, I think it's also a difference between, when you come in with a lot of negative emotion and negative energy, that clouds the message.
Yes.
And you talk about future employers. I know a lot of, people's leaders who they are connected with on social media. And the leaders have said, oh yeah, I was looking at their posts over here on Facebook. They seem really upset about this political issue or whatever it is. They seem so upset that I'm concerned about their well-being.
Well,
because the way the energy is so bad. I'm worried that things are not going well in their life.
Yes.
Because it almost feels like this angry venting.
Right.
And then they're rethinking promotions.
Yes.
Because they're thinking, if this person's in this place now, I can't move her to the next level.
Right.
Because, boy, that might break her. I don't want to do that. So you could be watched right now. Gosh, we're having so much fun. Time's already running out. So I want to make sure we get our final two. So we've talked about, of the 4 no-nos, we talked about not dressing appropriately. We talked about watching the social media presence and managing that well. What are our last 2, number 3 and number 4?
Number 3 is not being prepared for lunch with the boss. And number 4 is not being on time.
Okay.
And so I'll address not being on time, punctuality, timeliness. There's a lot of flex time and flexibility with jobs today, but being late in the American business culture is a big no-no. Timeliness is still viewed as a virtue. So the problems that I see happens not because people are being late because they just choose to. It's because they don't understand what on time means. In the American business culture, and I'll just run these rules really by you quickly, being on time for an internal meeting means, well, I'll start with the external meeting. External meeting, you need to arrive 15 minutes before the meeting is scheduled to begin. And the reason for that is not because of some archaic rule. It gives you an opportunity to engage in those before meeting conversations, the small talk where the relationship building happens. And then for an internal meeting, it all depends on company culture. You have to look to your colleagues and maybe your boss for guidance on what that looks like. Is it 5 minutes before? Is it, 60 seconds before? But you need to make sure that you are on time. Not being prepared for lunch with the boss, big issue these days, because you mentioned earlier in the show that you're just thrown into, you have a big megaphone sooner rather than later. I know, I remember when lunch with the boss was an honor and it took a long time before you actually had lunch, were invited, if you were ever invited to lunch with the boss. But now everyone goes to lunch with the boss, and young people don't understand how to prepare, and they miss these wonderful opportunities. It's not about the knife and the fork. It's about being prepared to engage in small talk, to talk about your projects. Even if your boss says, hey, do you want to grab a cup of coffee tomorrow at 1:30? It sounds very casual. It sounds very friendly. You're just going to hang out. No, you're going to talk about business. So be prepared to talk about your projects. Know something what's going on in the company, positive things. And be prepared to engage.
I'm a big fan of having a list of questions.
Yes.
And I love it when people ask me out to lunch or something and they said, I've prepared a list of questions. And might even old school pull out a piece of paper that's got 5 questions typed on it. I love that because it feels like they were prepared. What's your attitude towards that? Do you like that?
A list of questions if you're having lunch with the boss?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That shows your boss that you've taken some time to think about it. You value her time. You're prepared. You're trying to show that you are a good team player and you're motivated and you want to learn. What boss wouldn't love that?
Awesome. I'm on track, folks. I'm doing some things right. Okay, here's something I'm doing wrong, and so I'm going to test this with Stayce. Occasionally, I blame Atlanta traffic, but I got to take some responsibility for this too. I'll be late to a meeting.
Sure.
Okay. My gut is, in American business culture, if you're 5 minutes late, you're not too late. But maybe, she's smirking. I'm in trouble.
No,
I'm
you're
totally in trouble.
No, you're not.
I've been really, I thought I was okay, and I'm not okay. She just told me I'm not okay.
No. The key word is occasionally.
Okay.
If you are, no one's perfect. Things happen. But if that's your habit, if you're always 5 minutes late, well, then you need to do some adjusting.
Got it.
Do some adjusting. But on the other side of that, for all of the people who are thinking, well, I'm always early, you can be too early to a meeting, to an appointment. Because if you show up before that 15-minute window, maybe the person who is expecting you is trying to finish something, and you're making them feel pressured about adjusting their schedule to accommodate you.
Oh, I see.
So it works on, it works both ways. But there's nothing wrong with, I will say it, it's human to be late occasionally. These rules are designed to help us, not to make us feel bad about ourselves.
Art and science and all this.
Yes.
Now, while we are over on time, speaking of time, but that's okay, I have one last question. I kind of opened with this as a hint, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It's a very tactical thing, but I think it's an important one. Let's say you're traveling on business. Mm-hmm. You're taking a flight to wherever, Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Okay, traveling on business. What would you recommend the attire be?
Traveling on business.
Yeah, you're traveling on business, but it's not. You're not working, so the meeting won't start till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's a 3:00 flight. Your only thing you're going to do is get to the airport, go to your hotel, check in, and get ready for tomorrow. But it's still business. And the reason why I'm asking this is I think that sometimes people don't always consider that they're still quote unquote on stage.
Exactly.
Even because they think, oh, it's not work hour.
Right.
I'm just traveling.
Right.
But
it's a small world.
I remember back in the day when I was a Boy Scout, you had your Class A uniforms, you had your Class B uniforms. So when you would travel to a Boy Scout camp, you wore your Class B uniforms, which was a Boy Scout t-shirt, Boy Scout shorts, but you still had a uniform.
Exactly.
That was for travel. And that was based on the military. You have your uniform that's travel, but you're still honoring
exactly
what you're doing. I would be curious how you would interpret that today, and if I'm just way too grumpy and old school.
No, well, first of all, you're not grumpy.
I try not to be. My kids may differ. My kids may just differ with you, Stayce.
I agree with you. You're always on that clock, especially if you're traveling with a colleague or with your boss. If you're in the banking world, you can dress on the casual side. If you can dress on the casual side of whatever world you're in, but it still should be neat, clean, wrinkle-free. You should look like you're going to some casual event. The world is really small. It's rare that I take a flight and I don't run into someone I know somewhere. You're representing your company, so you don't want to be caught in a situation where you don't look like you're on company business. Be comfortable, but look like you're on company business.
Yeah. I like that. Look like you're on business, folks. You're doing something good. Well, I was traveling with my kids this last week to Disney. It was just me and my 3 kids. My wife bailed out on this one. She said, I'm Disneyed out. I'm bowing out on this trip. So it's just me and my 3 kids. But I ran into a business school colleague of mine who works at Delta. Mm-hmm. And we had a great conversation. And luckily I was dressed okay. Like I wasn't too, even though it was just vacation.
Right.
Because you never know who you're going to bump into.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to be stiff. You don't have to wear a 3-piece suit. I'm not saying that. I don't want people saying, oh my gosh, she wants you to dress up for the plane. But be presentable. Be comfortable, but be presentable.
And it can impact how you're treated too by the...
Absolutely.
When they talk about, like when they do kind of flight attendant confidentials.
Absolutely.
They say, the folks who come on the plane, those individuals that are dressed nice and respectful, those customers tend to, we tend to want to help them a little more.
Yes.
Than the person who's maybe grumpier or not doing that.
Dressed like they're watching TV all day at Saturday, and their dirty sweats and their hair isn't combed, and that feels good sometimes. I have to say that, but not for public.
I get it. I totally get it. Okay. So I ask all my guests this question: what's one life hack you have for us that can help make our lives more free from dysfunction and healthier, personally or professionally?
I think it covers both areas, and that is listening to one another, active listening, really taking the time to make eye contact, put down the cell phone, turn away from the computer, stop multitasking, stop thinking about what you're going to say in response to what you think they're going to say, and actually listen to what they have to say. You may not agree with the other person, but let them know that their opinions matter to you and that they matter to you. And I think that will help all of us get along a lot better in this world.
Fantastic. That's a life truth right there. And I love that. Not only do their opinions matter, but they matter.
Yes. Yes.
So, Stayce, you're an absolute gift. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Well, they can go to my website, spencercrane.com, SPENCERCRANE.com.
Crane like the bird.
Crane like the bird. I'm on social media at Career Etiquette. And I've just recently published a book, Modern Business Etiquette for Young and Fabulous Professionals. It's a guidebook for young women. And you can find that on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
And if they want to search under your name for the book,
You can search under my name, Stayce Wagner.
it's Stayce.
Yes, Stayce, Stayce. Thanks, Mom. Wagner, Wagner.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. This was great. We'll have to have you back
my
for even more
pleasure.
because the world clearly needs this.
I'd love to.
And thank you for listening and watching. Continue to keep up the fight every week against workplace dysfunction. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook.com, Facebook.com/Braden Smith WPT for a workplace therapist. Twitter at the WP Therapist. We've been dropping a new show every Sunday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. But of course, you all know that. And of course, there's more resources available for you on my website, The Workplace Therapist. So just Google The Workplace Therapist. So until our next show and next week, have a fantastic week and an awesome life.